At some point in a relationship, maybe recently, maybe years ago, you probably did something you couldn't fully explain. You pulled away from someone who was treating you well, or you stayed with someone who wasn't. You became someone you didn't recognise, anxious, distant, clingy, cold. And when it was over, or when the dust settled, you asked yourself, why do I keep doing this? The answer almost certainly isn't a character flaw. It isn't bad luck, and it isn't that you haven't tried hard enough. It's the wiring. Specifically, your attachment style. The behavioural and emotional blueprint that formed before you had any say in the matter. And that has been quietly running your relationships ever since. Attachment theory was developed in the 1960s by British psychiatrist John Bowlby. His central argument was that human beings are biologically wired to form close emotional bonds, and that the quality of our earliest bonds, particularly with our primary caregivers, shapes how we relate to others for the rest of our lives. This wasn't a soft, therapeutic idea. Bowlby was drawing on evolutionary biology. His claim was that attachment behaviour, seeking closeness, protesting separation, using a trusted person as a safe base, is a survival mechanism. Infants who stayed close to their caregivers survived. The drive to attach is ancient and it is powerful. In the 1970s, developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth conducted a now famous series of experiments called the Strange Situation. She observed how infants responded when briefly separated from their caregivers and then reunited. What she found was that not all children responded the same way, and those differences were directly tied to the caregiving they'd received. Some children were secure, some were anxious, some were avoidant. A fourth pattern, disorganised, was added later by researchers Mary Main and Judith Solomon. These 4 patterns are the 4 attachment styles, and while they were originally mapped in children, decades of research have confirmed something important. Those same patterns show up in adults, in how we handle intimacy, conflict, vulnerability, and love. You probably have one of them. Let's go through each. If you have an anxious attachment style, relationships feel high stakes, even when nothing is objectively wrong. You're attuned to your partner in a way that can feel like a superpower. You notice shifts in tone, pauses in responses, subtle changes in warmth. You're emotionally perceptive. But that same sensitivity has a dark side. It means you're also scanning almost constantly for signs that something is wrong, that they're pulling away, that you've done something, said something, become too much or not enough. When that alarm goes off, even if it's a false alarm, the response is protest behaviour, texting more, seeking reassurance, replaying conversations, becoming preoccupied with the relationship in a way that crowds out everything else. The core belief underneath anxious attachment is this: I am someone who could be left. Not this specific person might leave, but a deeper, older conviction that love is conditional and your hold on it is precarious. Where does this come from? Typically, inconsistent caregiving. Not neglect, inconsistency. A caregiver who was warm and present sometimes, distracted or unavailable at others. The child learned love is available, but you can't rely on it being there. So you develop hypervigilance. You learn to monitor, to pursue, to escalate, because sometimes that works. The tragedy of anxious attachment is that the very behaviours it produces tend to create the outcome it fears. Constant reassurance seeking can exhaust partners. Protest behaviour can push people away. And that confirms the belief that was there from the beginning. One thing worth naming: anxious attachment doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone who learned in a specific environment that love required effort and vigilance to hold on to. That was an adaptation. It just may not be serving you now. Avoidant attachment looks, from the outside, like emotional self-sufficiency. The person with avoidant attachment is often capable, independent, and composed. They don't easily ask for help. they don't readily disclose. When relationships become emotionally intense, they tend to create distance, practically or emotionally. From the inside, it feels different. It's not that connection doesn't matter, it's that intimacy at a certain depth triggers something that functions like threat. Getting too close, depending on someone, being truly known, these things feel dangerous, even if the person can't articulate why. The core belief in avoidant attachment is roughly needing people is a liability, depending on others means being let down. Self-reliance is safer. This typically develops in environments where emotional needs were not consistently met, not through cruelty, but through a caregiving style that was dismissive of emotion. Stop crying. You're fine. Don't be so sensitive. The child learns quickly. Expressing emotional needs produces rejection or discomfort. So they suppress those needs. They become self-contained. In adult relationships, this creates a specific dynamic. The avoidant person often does want closeness. But when they get it, or when their partner pushes for more of it, the automatic response is withdrawal. They need space to feel safe. Their partner, often anxiously attached, interprets that withdrawal as rejection, and the cycle begins. An important distinction: avoidant attachment is not the same as being introverted or valuing independence or taking time to open up. Those are personality traits. Avoidant attachment is a defensive structure. It keeps people at a specific distance to prevent a specific kind of pain. Where anxious attachment produces pursuit and avoidant attachment produces withdrawal, fearful avoidant produces both, often simultaneously, or in rapid alternation. The person with a fearful avoidant style wants deep connection. They also fear it. Those two drives don't take turns gracefully, they collide. The result can look chaotic from the outside: intense connection followed by sudden shutdown, profound vulnerability followed by emotional retreat, reaching out then disappearing, staying then leaving, sometimes in the same relationship, sometimes across many. This style often develops in environments where the caregiver was also the source of fear or harm. Not necessarily dramatic trauma. It can be a parent who was unpredictable, emotionally volatile, or who used love as a mechanism of control. The child faces an impossible situation. The person they need for safety is also the person they need safety from. There is no coherent strategy. So the attachment system becomes disorganized. In adulthood, this can manifest as a deep longing for love combined with a strong and often automatic conviction that love leads to pain. Relationships tend to feel like a test you're going to fail. Fearful avoidant attachment is less common than anxious or avoidant, but it's overrepresented in the people who describe their relationship history as genuinely confusing. Not just painful, but hard to make sense of. Secure attachment is often framed as the goal, the ideal, but it's worth understanding what it actually is, not just as an aspiration, but as a lived experience. Securely attached people are not people who don't get hurt, don't have insecurities, or don't struggle in relationships. They're people who have a relatively stable internal foundation from which to engage with those difficulties. The core belief in secure attachment is, I am someone who can give and receive love, and relationships are generally safe. When conflict arises, it doesn't feel like a threat to the relationship's existence. When a partner needs space, it doesn't trigger abandonment panic. When the secure person has a need, they can communicate it without expecting it to be weaponized against them. This develops from caregiving that was consistently warm and responsive, not perfect but reliable. The child learned, I can ask for what I need and it will usually be received. The world and the people in it are broadly trustworthy. Secure attachment is the most common style, roughly 50 to 60% of the population, which means it's the baseline against which the other styles are measured. But growing up with insecure attachment doesn't mean you're fixed there. Earned security, security developed through therapeutic work, through safe relationships, through sustained self-awareness, is real and well documented. That's central to this channel. The wiring isn't permanent, but you can't change what you can't see. By now, you probably recognise yourself in one of these descriptions. Most people do. A few things worth noting. Attachment styles exist on a spectrum. You can have primary traits of one style with elements of another. Avoidant people often have anxious undercurrents. Fearful avoidance can cycle between resembling anxious and resembling avoidant depending on the stage of a relationship. Your attachment style can also shift somewhat depending on who you're with. People can behave more securely with a secure partner, or more anxiously with someone who triggers their specific fears. And crucially, knowing your style is the beginning, not the end. Understanding why you do what you do in relationships is not the same as being freed from it. But it's a necessary first step. You can't work with something you haven't named. The next video in this series goes one layer deeper. How the experiences of your childhood, not just caregiving style, but specific dynamics, specific moments, shaped the blueprint you're carrying now. Because understanding your attachment style is one thing. Understanding where it came from specifically is where the real shift begins. And if you already know your style and want to understand why you keep ending up in the same dynamics with a particular type of person, that's coming too. The anxious avoidant pairing is one of the most researched, most painful and most common relationship patterns there is. We'll get into exactly why it happens, why it's so hard to break, and what it actually takes to change it. If this resonated, and if you've never taken the time to seriously ask which one of these is yours, stay with that question. The answer matters more than most people realise. It's not your fault, it's the wiring. And here's how to change it.